Welcome, my friends. Before we step into the frozen terror of Alaska, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let the horror begin. I always thought Alaska was quiet. Not the gentle quiet of a suburban night, where you can still hear the distant hum of cars and the occasional bark of a dog. No, this was a silence that seemed alive. It pressed against your ears, filled your lungs, and left you with the strange sensation that the world itself was holding its breath. I arrived in Anchorage in late January, chasing a contract I should have refused. A geological survey team needed someone to man their remote research station after 2 of their technicians backed out at the last minute. The pay was obscene, double my usual rate, and I convinced myself the isolation wouldn't bother me. I was wrong. The station, a squat prefab building buried in snowdrifts, sat 50 miles north of Nome. To get there, I flew in a rickety bush plane that rattled like it was made of tin, then rode the last stretch on a snowcat with a pilot who spoke no more than 10 words the entire trip. When he dropped me off, the pilot didn't even cut the engine. He just leaned out, shouted over the roar, "Radio if you need pickup," weather permitting. Then he turned and vanished into the endless white, leaving me alone with the station and the silence. Inside, the place was functional, bare and sterile. Bunk beds against one wall, a small kitchen, racks of instruments and blinking monitors, all powered by a diesel generator that hummed beneath the floor. The only warmth came from a wood stove and a stack of firewood that looked like it wouldn't last the season. There were no other people. I was supposed to meet 2 colleagues, grad students working on some environmental project, but the station log told me they'd left 3 days early due to equipment issues. That unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Still, I told myself I'd manage. I had enough supplies, enough fuel, and enough books to keep me sane. Nights would be long, but I'd handled isolation before. I wasn't afraid of being alone. But I should have been. The first 3 nights were uneventful. I kept to a routine, logging temperature readings, checking the sensors buried in the permafrost, filing reports over the radio. When I wasn't working, I read, wrote in a journal, or stared out the narrow window at the white expanse beyond. It was on the 4th night that I noticed it. At 2:13 a.m., I woke to a sound, a faint knocking. At first, I thought it was the stove settling, or ice shifting against the walls. But then I heard it again, 3 deliberate taps, followed by silence. I lay in my bunk, every nerve on edge, listening. The wind howled outside, carrying a moaning whistle through the cracks of the building. Then, just as I convinced myself it was nothing, the tapping came again. This time, closer. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the room. Empty. The sound hadn't come from inside. It had come from beneath me, from under the floor. I forced myself to laugh, shaky and hollow. Probably the generator. Probably ice expanding, or a loose pipe. That was what I told myself as I pulled the blanket over my head and tried to sleep. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was knocking to be let in. The next morning, I went outside to clear the vents and check the fuel drums. The air hit me like knives, so cold it burned the inside of my nose. My breath crystallized instantly, hanging in the air like smoke. As I shoveled snow from the vents, I saw them. Tracks. They weren't mine. I hadn't been outside since arrival. And they weren't from any animal I knew. The prints were human. Barefoot. A trail of them led from the tree line about 50 yards away. stopping just short of the station wall. The snow around them was undisturbed, smooth and white, as if whoever had left them had appeared from nowhere, walked to my door, then vanished. I stared at those prints until my fingers went numb through my gloves. The toes were long, too long, the spacing uneven. Whoever had walked there had done so barefoot in sub-zero temperatures. That should have been impossible. I told myself the wind had shaped them. Shadows, tricks of the ice. I scraped them away with the shovel, trying to erase the sight from my mind. But all day, the image of those strange footprints lingered. That night, the knocking came again. By the 7th day, the silence no longer felt empty. It felt crowded. I began hearing things in it. Not just knocks now, but whispers. Soft murmurs in the walls, just on the edge of hearing. Words I couldn't quite make out. One night, while checking the logs, the radio crackled to life. Static at first, then a voice, thin, reedy, and childlike. "Let me in." I froze, my hand hovering over the dial. The voice came again, stretched and distorted by the static. Cold. So cold. "Please, let me in." I yanked the plug from the wall and sat there in silence, heart hammering. The radio was off, but I still heard the faintest trace of that voice, whispering from nowhere. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the stove, rifle across my lap, watching the door. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind outside made me flinch. And then, at 4 a.m., I heard footsteps crunching in the snow outside. Slow, dragging footsteps circling the station. I didn't look out the window. I couldn't. I didn't sleep for the rest of that night. The sound of those dragging footsteps circling the cabin etched itself into my nerves like acid. Each crunch was deliberate, slow, purposeful, pausing every few seconds as if whatever was out there was listening for me. When dawn finally bled across the horizon, a pale blue light that did little to banish the shadows, I forced myself to look outside. The tracks were back. Not a single set this time. Dozens. They circled the station in uneven, spiraling patterns, weaving back and forth, as though a crowd of people had wandered drunkenly around the building all night. Barefoot. Always barefoot. I opened the door, and the cold slammed into me, stealing my breath. The snow squeaked beneath my boots as I stepped out, rifle slung over my shoulder. The prints weren't filled with frostbite-darkened blood like I expected. Instead, they were clean, sharp-edged, as though the snow itself hadn't dared to collapse back into them. I followed them a few yards toward the tree line. That was when I saw it. A figure. Standing among the trees, half hidden by frost-coated branches. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, head cocked unnaturally to one side. Its skin, or what little I could see of it, was pale, grayish, stretched tight over bone. And its eyes. God, its eyes were nothing but black hollows. I raised the rifle, but in the time it took me to blink, the figure was gone. Just the trees. Just the silence. I backed into the station, bolted the door, and didn't step outside again that day. The next few days blurred together in a haze of sleeplessness and paranoia. I couldn't concentrate on my logs. My handwriting turned shaky, unreadable. Sometimes, I'd wake from a daze and find hours had passed without me noticing. The knocking became constant, not just at night, but all day. Irregular patterns tapping against the floor, the walls, sometimes even the windows. Always 3 raps at a time. I tried plugging my ears with cotton. Didn't help. The sound wasn't just audible, it was inside me, vibrating in my chest, crawling up my spine. On the 10th night, I broke. I shouted at it, screamed into the silence, my voice raw and ragged. What do you want?" And for the first time, it answered. From the other side of the door, a voice that wasn't quite human whispered, "You." On the 12th day, the power went out. The hum of the generator, my only companion, cut to silence like a throat being slit. I scrambled down into the crawl space where it sat, flashlight shaking in my hand. The smell hit me first. Rot, thick and cloying, like spoiled meat left too long in the sun. My light swept across the generator and froze. The fuel lines were shredded, not chewed, not cut, but torn apart as though something with claws had raked through them. And in the pooled diesel beneath, there were footprints. Bare, wet footprints that led away into the darkness of the crawl space. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to call for the bush pilot and get out. But the radio was dead without power. The storm outside hadn't let up for days, and even if I braved it on foot, I'd never survive the white void between me and the nearest outpost. I was trapped. That night, I sat by the wood stove, trying to ration the little fuel I had left, when I heard it again. The whisper. But this time it wasn't outside. It was behind me. I turned, heart slamming against my ribs. Nothing. Just the bunk beds, the dark corners. Then came the sound of breathing. Slow. Wet. Right at my ear. I spun again, but there was still nothing. Only the window, a rectangle of black against the wall. And in the window, a face. Pressed to the glass, skin pale as snow, mouth stretched into a grin that was far too wide. Its teeth were jagged, yellow, and its eyes, empty sockets, like before, but somehow staring directly into mine. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking over the chair. When I looked again, the window was empty. The only thing left was a smear of condensation where the face had been. In my panic, I tore through the station, searching for anything, any clue as to what had happened to the students who'd left early. In the supply closet, buried under blankets and canned food, I found a box of cassette tapes. They weren't labeled, except for dates scrawled in marker. The most recent was from 2 weeks before I arrived. Hands trembling, I fed it into the old tape recorder. Static crackled. Then a young man's voice came through. Day 27. Still no contact with base. Tracks keep showing up around the cabin. Not animal. Not human either. Barefoot in this cold. Hannah swears she saw something by the tree line last night. I told her it was just the wind. But I don't think I believe that anymore. A pause, then quieter. We hear it at night. Knocking. Whispers. Sometimes it calls our names. The tape cut off with a shriek, then silence. I stared at the recorder, unable to move, unable to breathe. Whatever had happened to them, it hadn't left. It was still here. With me. On the 15th night, the knocking stopped. At first I thought it was over, that maybe the thing outside had grown bored and left. The silence almost felt comforting, until the door creaked. Slowly, the lock rattled, turning as though an unseen hand toyed with it. Then came the voice, clearer than ever, just inches from me, as if it were whispering through the wood. "Let me in. Please." I'm so cold I gripped the rifle so hard my knuckles went white. My breath shook. The voice sounded different this time. Softer. Familiar. It was my mother's voice, but she'd been dead for years. "Let me in," it pleaded again, more desperate now. "Please, don't leave me out here. I'm freezing." Tears burned my eyes. Every instinct told me to open the door, to help. But deep down, I knew what waited on the other side wasn't her. It wasn't human at all. So I sat in the dark, rifle ready, while the voice begged me until dawn. By the 16th day, I had given up hope of rescue. Storms rolled across the horizon endlessly, blotting out the sun and sealing me in a prison of white. The woodpile shrank faster than I liked. My food rations, too. That was when the digging began. It started beneath the floorboards, faint at first, scraping, scratching, the sound of nails against packed earth. At first I thought rats had found their way in, but it grew louder, deeper, as though something much larger was tunneling up toward me. I tried to drown it out with the radio static, with my own voice shouting into the empty room, but the digging never stopped. Sometimes it paused, as if waiting for me to grow quiet, then started again the second I tried to sleep. That night, the stove's fire guttered out. The temperature plummeted. My breath fogged in the air as I lay in my bunk, wrapped in every blanket I could find. I could still hear the digging, closer than ever. And then, a whisper from directly beneath my mattress. Almost there, I couldn't take it anymore. Armed with the rifle and flashlight, I pried open the hatch to the crawl space. The smell of rot hit me instantly, stronger than before, making me gag. My beam of light caught the generator, still dead, half covered in frost. And beside it, the earth was disturbed, piled in loose mounds, like something had been clawing its way upward. I forced myself closer. The soil shifted, moved. Then a hand shot out. It was thin, gray, with fingers twice as long as they should be, each tipped with ragged nails. It clawed at the air, reaching for me. I fired the rifle without thinking. The blast deafened me in the confined space, filling the crawl space with acrid smoke. The hand vanished back into the dirt, leaving only a gaping black hole where the earth had been torn open. The digging stopped. For now. But I knew it wasn't gone. It was waiting. By the 18th day, I was losing time. Hours slipped away in blinks, my journal entries dissolving into scribbles I didn't remember writing. Sometimes I'd wake to find the door unbolted, snow drifting in across the floor, though I knew I hadn't opened it. Once, I came to standing barefoot outside, the cold gnawing at my flesh, staring at the tree line. The footprints stretched out behind me, matching the others perfectly. My own feet. But I didn't remember walking there. The thing wasn't just outside anymore, it was inside me. That night, the whispers grew louder, no longer trying to hide. Voices overlapped, dozens of them, men, women, children, all speaking at once, all begging in unison. Let us in. The windows rattled. The walls shook. Snow sifted from the ceiling like dust. I clutched the rifle and screamed until my throat tore, but the voices didn't stop. Then, as suddenly as they began, they went silent. And in the silence, I heard something worse. Breathing. Right behind me. I turned. It was standing in the doorway of the bunk room. Tall, skeletal, its skin stretched so tight over its bones that it looked ready to split. Its mouth opened in that horrible, too-wide grin, and from it came not one voice, but many, layered on top of one another like a choir of the damned. Cold, it hissed. So cold. It stepped closer. The boards creaked under its weight, though it looked impossibly frail. Its empty eyes locked onto mine. I tried to raise the rifle, but my arms wouldn't move. My body wasn't my own anymore. My legs carried me forward, closer to it, while my mind screamed to stop. It reached out a hand and touched my cheek. The skin of its fingers was like ice, burning and numbing at the same time. Then it whispered, in my own voice, "Almost home." Darkness swallowed me whole. I woke to silence. The storm had ended. Sunlight, thin, watery but real, filtered through the window. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then I saw the door. It stood wide open, snow piled in drifts across the floor. Barefoot prints trailed out into the white, dozens of them, leading toward the tree line. My prints. The rifle was gone. The tapes, the journals, gone. The station looked ransacked, as if months had passed instead of days. I stumbled outside, dazed, the cold biting at my skin. The prints stretched farther than I could see, a trail of my own bare feet leading me into the forest. And from deep within the trees, I heard the knocking again. 3 sharp raps, followed by my own voice calling back, "Let me in!" They tell me I was found wandering half dead on the ice, barefoot, frostbitten, clothes torn to rags. The bush pilot who picked me up said I nearly froze to death just a mile from the station. But when the rescue team returned for my things, the station was gone. Not destroyed, not buried. Gone. As if it had never been there. No foundation, no wreckage, just untouched snow. They don't believe my story. They say the cold drove me mad, that I hallucinated the whole thing. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind dies and the house grows quiet, I hear it again. Knocking. 3 times. Always 3. And a voice, soft and pleading, whispering through the walls. Let me in. I don't know what made me go. Curiosity, maybe. Or something deeper. The kind of itch that doesn't go away until you scratch it raw. All I know is that I shouldn't have gone. I shouldn't have searched for that town. You see, Alaska is full of stories. Old mining camps, swallowed by snow. Fishing villages abandoned after one bad winter. And settlements that never should have been built where they were in the first place. Most vanish quietly, with nothing left behind but rotting wood and the ghosts of names forgotten by history. But this town, this one was different. Its name was Whittick. At least, that's what I found buried in an old newspaper archive from 1953. According to the last edition printed, Whittick was a small logging community of 100 or so people, located deep in the Alaskan interior. One day, they were there. The next, gone. No bodies were ever found. No records of a mass departure. No explanation. Just silence. A brief article mentioned that state officials investigated, but claimed the town had been abandoned voluntarily. The paper gave no reason why. Another source hinted at a government cover-up. Then there were the whispers online, on forums nobody sane should visit, where people wrote about the town that eats itself, or the silence that spreads. I thought it was all folklore, a creepypasta with a cold coat of realism. And yet, the more I read, the more it gnawed at me. What if there really had been a place that simply ceased to exist? What if something unnatural, had happened there? I'm a journalist by trade, though a poor one. My editor always said I chased the wrong stories, the ones no one cared about. You want clicks, he'd tell me. Write about celebrity meltdowns, not ghost towns. But there was something about Whittick that wouldn't let me go. So I packed a bag, booked a flight to Fairbanks, and from there rented a truck with tires studded for ice. I told no one where I was going. Some part of me knew I wasn't coming back. The drive north was brutal. Alaska in mid-January doesn't forgive mistakes. The sky stayed a dull iron gray, the kind that swallows the horizon and makes time feel slippery. Snow battered the windshield, the wipers squealing against the ice that tried to creep across the glass. Civilization thinned out quickly. Gas stations gave way to shuttered cabins. The last sign of life I passed was a roadside diner, its neon sign buzzing weakly. half buried under drifts of white. After that, just endless trees, black and skeletal, stabbing up from the snow. I followed what remained of an old logging road, the one that supposedly led to Whittick. My map was decades out of date, and GPS gave up miles ago. I relied on photocopies of county survey charts I'd dug out of a library archive. Each mile dragged me deeper into nowhere. It was the silence that unnerved me most. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of absence. No birds, no wind through the trees, no distant creak of ice. Just the crunch of my tires and the thrum of the engine. A silence so thick it pressed against the windows. By the time the road narrowed to little more than a snow-choked trail, I began to wonder if I'd made a mistake. Maybe the stories were right. Maybe the town had been erased, not by some dark legend, but by time itself. Then I saw the sign. It leaned sideways at the edge of the trees, weather-worn and coated in frost. The letters were faded, but still legible. Whittick, population 123. The exact number whispered in every article, every forum post. I killed the engine. The sudden stillness was almost unbearable. My breath fogged the cabin as I sat, staring at the sign, debating whether to turn back. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But curiosity is a poison, and mine had already seeped too deep. I stepped out into the snow. The cold hit like a blade, slicing through my coat and gloves. I pulled my scarf higher over my face and started forward. My boots sank into the powder, crunching loudly in the oppressive silence. Ahead, through the trees, I saw the faint outline of rooftops. The town. It shouldn't have been there, not after 70 years. Not like this. Whittick was frozen in time. The houses still stood, their wooden frames intact, roofs sagging slightly under the weight of decades of snow, but far from ruined. The windows were cracked, but not shattered. Doors hung crookedly, some ajar. Didn't look like a ruin. Looked like a place waiting. I walked down what had once been the main street. A rusted pickup truck sat parked at the curb, its tires long since devoured by the earth, but its paint still visible beneath the frost. A general store stood with its door half open, a faded sign swinging faintly in the still air. I pushed inside. Dust coated the shelves, but the goods remained. Cans of soup, boxes of crackers, jars of pickles. I picked one up and blinked in disbelief. The label wasn't faded. The colors were still bright, as though it had been stocked yesterday. But the expiration date printed on the bottom read 1953. I set it down quickly, my hands trembling. This wasn't natural. Abandoned places rot. They decay. They crumble. But here, everything seemed preserved, untouched by time. I left the store and moved deeper down the street, unease growing with every step. The silence was unbearable. I kept expecting to hear something, wind, animals, anything. But there was nothing. And then I noticed something that froze me in place. Footprints in the snow, fresh and sharp, barefoot, human. They trailed down the street, leading straight toward the church at the far end of town. My heart hammered against my ribs. The cold no longer felt like weather. It felt like breath, like the whole town was exhaling against my skin. I should have turned back then. I should have followed the tracks of my own boots and left. But I didn't. I followed the footprints. The closer I got, the more wrong it felt. The church was taller than the rest of the town. Its steeple bent slightly to one side, as though something heavy had leaned against it for too long. The double doors stood half open, their wood swollen and cracked. Snow packed against the threshold like a barricade. The footprints led straight inside. I hesitated at the doorway, my flashlight trembling in my hand. My breath fogged the air, each exhale sounding far too loud in the silence. For a moment, I thought I heard something. A faint hum, like a low drone carried on the wind. But the air was perfectly still. I pushed the doors wider. They groaned in protest, the sound echoing into the vast hollow of the church. Inside was darker than night. My flashlight beam cut across the rows of pews, revealing layers of frost and dust. It was colder here, impossibly colder, like the air itself had been drained of life. That's when I saw them. At first, my mind refused to process what I was looking at. The pews weren't empty. They were filled. Dozens of people sat frozen in place. Their skin was gray, their clothes stiff with ice, their eyes wide open and glazed over. Every face was locked in an expression of horror, mouths agape, as if mid-scream. Some clutched each other, others stared forward at the altar. I stumbled backward, my shoulder slamming into the doorframe. A scream caught in my throat, but never left my lips. They weren't statues. They weren't mannequins. They had once been alive. Every single one of Whittick's 123 citizens was here, and they had been frozen alive. I forced myself to move, inching down the aisle with my flashlight sweeping from side to side. Their eyes seemed to follow me, glassy and unblinking, accusing. I wanted to run, but something stronger than fear held me there, the need to understand. At the pulpit, a Bible sat open, its pages stiff with frost, but perfectly legible. My light caught the words, underlined in ink that hadn't faded despite 70 years. Deliver us from the hunger and the snow. The words weren't scripture. They were written in the margins, scrawled over and over in a frantic hand. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Hunger in the snow. The phrase rattled in my skull like a loose stone. That was when the humming returned. It rose slowly, almost too faint to notice at first, then deepened into something steady, deliberate, inhuman. A lullaby, but broken, stretched thin like sinew pulled to its limit. My flashlight darted toward the sound. In the shadows of the far corner, something moved. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, some warped reflection off the ice. But then it shifted again, tall and impossibly thin, its head nearly brushing the rafters. I froze. It stepped forward, slow and deliberate, its movements jerky like a marionette pulled by tangled strings. My beam caught its body, gaunt, skeletal, its skin stretched too tight across bones that seemed too long, too sharp. Its face. God. Its face. It was hollow. Where eyes should have been, there were only pits of black, endless and empty. Its mouth opened and closed slowly, dragging the hum out of the void in its chest. The footprints, the humming. It had been here all along. I staggered back, knocking against a frozen figure in the pew. The ice cracked, and one brittle hand snapped off, hitting the ground with a sound that echoed through the church like a gunshot. The humming stopped. The figure in the corner tilted its head, listening, and then it turned toward me. My flashlight flickered. For the first time in my life, I felt something worse than fear. Not terror, not panic. Something deeper. A recognition, as if some buried part of me already knew this thing. As if it had been waiting for me long before I ever came to Whittick. The church doors slammed shut behind me. The slam of the doors shook the church like a thunderclap. My flashlight slipped from my grip and rolled across the frozen floorboards, its beam spinning wildly over faces locked in eternal screams. I scrambled after it, fingers numb, and snatched it up just as the humming returned. It was closer now. I didn't look back. I bolted down the aisle, boots pounding against wood that echoed like a drum. The frozen townsfolk blurred at the edges of my vision, their dead eyes flashing in the beam. I hit the door shoulder first, and they gave way, exploding outward into the night. The air outside hit me like a wall, sharp with cold. My lungs burned as I sucked in a breath that felt like knives. I stumbled into the snow, legs pumping, heart jackhammering in my chest. Behind me, the humming grew louder. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The thing had followed. It was stepping out of the church, tall and jagged against the pale moonlight. Its long limbs bent at angles that didn't make sense. Its skin shimmered faintly, as though frost grew across it with every movement. The snow beneath its feet didn't crunch or give way. It seemed to freeze harder, sharper wherever it stepped. I turned back and ran. The main street stretched ahead of me, lined with dark houses that leaned in like witnesses. My flashlight beam swung wildly, catching glimpses of windows, faces pressed against the glass. I nearly tripped. They weren't faces. They were reflections of the people frozen in the church. Every window I passed showed another figure. Not mannequins, not statues. People, their forms etched into the glass like frost paintings. Their mouths were moving. Silent screams. I pushed harder, my boots digging into the snow, every breath ragged and raw. My only thought was to reach the truck, to get out before whatever this was closed in on me. But the streets weren't right. I knew the way I had come, the store on the left, the rusted truck on the right. But the layout had changed. The road forked where it shouldn't. Buildings leaned where none had stood before. The town was shifting. Panic clawed at my chest. I turned left, then right, my flashlight slicing through the dark, but every corner led to another street I didn't recognize. The snow was deeper now, dragging at my legs like wet cement. And the humming never stopped. It grew, filled the air, seeped into my bones. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration. A low resonance that rattled my ribs and made my teeth ache. My head swam, my vision blurred. For one horrible moment, I thought my heart was beating in rhythm with the hum. I stumbled into a wide clearing at the center of town. A frozen fountain stood there, a stone angel at its heart, wings spread in defiance of the cold. Ice had crusted its face until it looked blind. I stopped, chest heaving, light shaking. The footprints. They were everywhere, dozens of them. Barefoot, human, pressed fresh into the snow, circling the fountain, leading off into the streets. My stomach turned as I realized they overlapped, tangled, multiplied. It wasn't one person who had walked barefoot through this place. It was all of them. All 123. I spun, desperate, and caught sight of movement. The thing was there, standing at the edge of the clearing. Tall, still, patient. Its head tilted to one side, watching. The hum stopped. Silence fell, heavier than before, crushing. My own heartbeat sounded too loud, too alive. Then the angel cracked. The sound was like splitting ice, sharp and final. I turned just in time to see the stone face shatter, flakes of frost spilling down like tears. The angel's blind socket stared straight at me, and in that moment, I knew. The town wasn't abandoned. It wasn't frozen in time. It was waiting. I turned and ran again, blindly, stumbling into an alley that hadn't existed seconds before. My flashlight flickered, sputtering, the batteries giving out. I slapped it, begged it, and for a moment it held steady. The alley ended at a house. Its door was ajar, light flickering faintly within. Not electric, candlelight. I didn't care. I threw myself inside. The warmth hit me first. Real warmth. The kind of heat that thawed my skin and made me realize how cold I truly was. I collapsed against the wall, panting, ears straining for the hum. Silence. I lifted the flashlight. The room was small, cluttered, lived in. A fire burned in the hearth, impossibly alive. A pot sat on the mantel, steam rising from it. Someone was here. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Is someone here?" The floor creaked. I swung the beam toward the sound. A figure stood in the doorway to the next room. A woman, dressed in heavy furs, her skin pale but not frozen, her eyes wide and alive. She looked at me as though she'd been expecting me. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. My blood turned to ice. What is this place?" Her lips trembled. "It's hungry." It always was behind me. The hum began again. The hum seeped through the walls, low and steady, rattling the glass in the windows, vibrating in my bones. I pressed back against the hearth, my flashlight trembling as I held it on the woman. She hadn't moved from the doorway. She just stood there, pale and trembling, her fur-lined coat hanging loose around her thin frame. "You shouldn't have come," she said again, her voice flat as if rehearsed. I swallowed hard, forcing words through my dry throat. What is that thing? What happened to this town? Her eyes flicked toward the door, as though the creature outside could hear us, even through the walls. Maybe it could. She stepped into the room at last, her boots whispering over the floorboards, and sat down heavily on a wooden chair near the fire. "You've seen it already, haven't you?" I nodded, unable to trust my voice. She closed her eyes, and for a moment the firelight made her face look older, drawn with years of exhaustion. "We called it the hunger. That's the only name I've ever known for it." The hunger. The phrase from the Bible scroll, "Deliver us from the hunger and the snow." I forced myself to speak. "What is it?" Her eyes opened again, sharp, fevered. "It's what comes when the snow stays too long. When people take too much from the land. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. It watches. And when it's ready, it feeds." My stomach clenched. "You mean it killed everyone here?" She shook her head slowly. "Not killed. Taken." Claimed. Her gaze fell toward the floorboards. "The others, they thought they could bargain with it. Keep the sawmills running. Keep the logging camps alive. There was money here back then. Timber. But the land was bleeding. Too much cut, too fast. And the hunger came to remind them." She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders, though the fire crackled warmly between us. "The preacher tried to protect us. He called a gathering at the church. Everyone came. He said prayer would save us." Her voice faltered. But prayer only called it closer. I thought of the frozen faces in the pews, mouths wide, eyes staring. "What happened?" I whispered. Her hands shook in her lap. "It sang to us." That hum, it froze them where they sat, one by one, until there was no one left to scream. I don't know why it spared me. The hum outside swelled, as if mocking her words. The walls creaked under its weight. I leaned forward, desperate, terrified. "How long ago was this?" Her eyes locked onto mine. 72 years. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. My breath caught in my throat. She looked alive, breathing, speaking, moving. But her skin was too pale, her cheeks hollow, her eyes glassy. Not frozen, no, but not fully living either. "You've been here all that time?" I asked, the words spilling out. She gave a bitter smile. "Here, nowhere else. You don't leave Whittick once the hunger has you. You stay. You stay until it's done." I staggered back, heart pounding. "Then why can I move? Why hasn't it?" Her expression hardened. "Because it's not finished. It called you here, just like it called me. Just like it called all the others before." I shook my head violently. No, I came because I read about this place. I found it in records. You think you found it?" Her voice rose suddenly, sharp as break-in glass. "You think you chose this? It lets itself be remembered. It lets itself be found. The hunger doesn't hunt. It waits." The hum grew louder, vibrating the walls, rattling the chair beneath her. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was inside me, in my chest, in my teeth. The woman stood abruptly, eyes wide, panic flooding her face. "You have to go!" "I tried!" I shouted, my voice barely carrying over the rising hum. "The streets keep changing. I can't find my way back." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Her skin was ice cold, colder than the snow outside. "Don't run from it." Running only feeds it faster. If you want to live, you have to starve it. Don't listen. Don't look. Don't follow. The hum cut off. Silence dropped like a guillotine. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the fire crackling in the hearth. My ears rang with the sudden absence, my body trembling from the vibration still echoing in my bones. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. The woman froze, her fingers digging into my arm hard enough to bruise. Her lips formed a single word, soundless. "Don't." The knock came again, louder this time. I lifted the flashlight toward the door, the beam quivering in my hand. Through the frosted glass pane, I saw a shape. Small, child-sized. The door creaked. Snow sifted through the cracks as the knob turned slowly, deliberately, though no hand touched it. The woman's grip slipped from my arm. Her face went slack, her eyes glassy. She whispered, barely audible, "It always comes back hungry." And the door opened. The door swung inward on its own, and the night spilled inside. Cold, silent, heavy with falling snow. My flashlight beam trembled across the threshold. At first, I saw nothing but the drifting flakes and the empty, dark street. Then the figure stepped through. It was a child, a boy, no older than 8. His cheeks were frost-bitten gray, his lips blue, but his eyes were wide open, glowing faintly as if lit from behind. He moved stiffly, each step deliberate, like a puppet on strings. The woman beside me made a low, broken sound in her throat. Not again. The boy stopped just inside the doorway, snowflakes clinging to his hair, his lips parted. At first, no sound came. Then, in a voice far too deep, far too resonant for his small frame, he spoke. "Come back." The single phrase vibrated in the air, layered, as though a dozen voices spoke at once. My body recoiled, but I couldn't look away. The boy raised one hand, crooked and trembling, and pointed toward the street. The woman grabbed my sleeve. "Don't follow! Don't listen!" But the air outside shifted. I heard footsteps, many footsteps, crunching in the snow. My beam swept over the street. Figures were moving, slow and silent, emerging from the shadows. Dozens of them. Men, women, children. Their faces pale and frozen, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They shuffled forward in eerie unison, each footfall crunching exactly in time with the others. The sound alone made my skin crawl. I stumbled backward into the cabin, but the boy didn't move any closer. He simply stood in the doorway, blocking my exit, his arm still raised toward the growing crowd outside. The woman's breath came in shallow gasps. "It's happening again." I turned to her, my voice cracking. "What do they want?" Her face twisted, half despair, half fury. "They want you. The hunger wants you through them." The hum returned then, faint at first, rippling under the sound of the crowd's synchronized steps. It was inside my chest again, inside my skull, vibrating my teeth until I thought they would crack. The townsfolk halted in the street, every glowing eye fixed on the cabin. The boy in the doorway tilted his head, bird-like, unnatural, and spoke again in that impossible layered voice. One more. The woman screamed, her body jerking as though something had struck her. She fell to her knees, clutching her head. "Don't listen," she begged, her voice thin and ragged. "If you answer, you're theirs." The crowd outside began to murmur, low, wordless, like wind howling through broken rafters. The sound rose, twisting into a chorus, and slowly, impossibly, the figures began to smile. I clutched the flashlight like a weapon, though I knew it was useless. My throat burned as I forced out words. "What happens if I don't answer?" The woman looked up, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Then maybe it starves." The boy blinked. Snowflakes clung unmelted to his lashes. He lowered his hand and took a step forward into the room. The cabin shuddered. The walls groaned. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied. In the firelight, the boy's shadow stretched long and jagged across the floor. Too long, too jagged, bending in ways no human shadow should. I staggered back until my shoulders hit the cold stone of the fireplace. My voice came out hoarse, desperate. "What are you?" The boy smiled faintly, his lips splitting to reveal teeth that were black with frost. And in that layered voice, he answered, "We are the ones who remain." Behind him, the crowd surged forward. Not Russian, not running, just moving, step by synchronized step, closer to the cabin. Their faces stayed fixed, their smiles growing, their glowing eyes reflecting the firelight like animals in the dark. The woman dragged herself upright, swaying on her feet. She seized my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "We can't fight it," she hissed. "But maybe we can trick it." Her eyes, sharp for the first time, locked on mine. "Don't speak. Don't look at them. Just follow me." Before I could protest, she lunged for the back door of the cabin. She flung it open, and the night wind howled inside. The boy in the doorway turned his head toward her, his smile faltering. For the first time, I thought I saw anger flicker across that pale, frozen face. The hum deepened, rumbling through the ground, shaking snow from the roof beams. The crowd outside let out a collective breath, a long hiss like air escaping a grave. The woman yanked me through the back door, into the snow-choked alley behind the cabin. The cold hit me like a wall, burning my lungs with each gasp. "Run," she said, her voice fierce. "But don't listen. No matter what you hear, don't listen." And we ran. Snow crunched underfoot, each step sinking deep. My flashlight beam swung wildly over abandoned shacks, collapsed fences, windows coated in frost. The hum pursued us, relentless, vibrating the very air. Then came the voices. Soft at first, then sharper. They whispered my name, not once, not twice. Over and over, from every direction, weaving through the wind like threads of ice. My parents' voices, friends I hadn't heard in years. My own voice, echoing back at me from the dark. "Come back. Stay with us. Don't leave me." I clamped my hands over my ears, stumbling in the snow. My chest burned with panic. "It knows my name." The woman's grip tightened on my arm. "Ignore it. They're not yours. They're never yours." We burst into a wide clearing at the edge of town. The church loomed ahead, its steeple broken, its windows glowing faintly as if lit from within. My stomach turned at the sight. I remembered the frozen congregation inside. But the woman didn't stop. She dragged me forward, toward the gaping doors. Inside, the pews were empty. I froze in the doorway, staring. The bodies I had seen earlier, the rows of frost-bitten faces, the congregation frozen mid-scream, were gone. The woman staggered to the altar, her shoulders shaking. It's moving them. It's gathering them. I took one step inside. My breath smoked in the frigid air. And then I heard it. Soft at first, then building. The sound of hundreds of feet, marching. I spun toward the entrance. The street outside was filling again. The crowd moved as one, glowing eyes fixed on the church. The boy stood at their head now, his expression calm, his frost-bitten lips curling into a thin smile. "One more," he whispered. The hum swelled, shaking the walls. Candles flickered to life on the altar without flame. The woman collapsed to her knees, clutching her head. "It's too late," she sobbed. "It always takes what it wants." I stood frozen, the flashlight useless in my shaking hand, as the dead began to file into the church. And for the first time, I felt it. Cold fingers, invisible, pressing against my mind. The hunger wasn't outside anymore. It was inside me. The hum had grown unbearable. It wasn't just in the walls or in the air. It was inside me, threading through my bones like wires, plucking at every nerve until I thought I would shatter. The woman knelt at the altar, her shoulders shaking as if she was praying. But I knew better. She wasn't begging for salvation. She was begging for mercy. The crowd filled the church now, row after row of frozen faces, eyes glowing faintly like candles under ice. The boy stood at the front, directly across from me, his frost-bitten lips twisted into that awful, knowing smile. "One more," he whispered again. The voices rose in unison, the sound of 100 mouths moving, layered into one vibrating demand. My knees buckled under the weight of it. My flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering uselessly across the stone floor. The woman looked at me then, her face streaked with frozen tears. "You can fight it," she said hoarsely, "but only if you choose." "Choose what?" I gasped. Her eyes flicked to the boy, then back to me. "To take it, or to let it take you." The boy tilted his head, studying me like an insect. Behind him, the congregation smiled wider, their lips cracking, bloodless, their breath steaming in the frozen air. The hunger pressed harder, invading thoughts, memories. I heard my mother's voice, my father's laugh, my best friend calling my name. All of them alive, warm, begging me to step forward, to join them. I almost did. My feet moved of their own accord, one step, then another, toward the front of the church. The crowd parted for me, their glowing eyes locked, their smiles wider than human mouths should stretch. The boy reached out a hand, small, trembling, cold, and for a heartbeat, I wanted to take it. Then the woman screamed. "Don't give it your name!" The words cut through the hum like glass shattering. I froze mid-step. My name. That was the tether. That was how it reached me. The boy's smile faltered, his glowing eyes narrowing. The hum deepened, furious, rattling the stained glass until cracks spiderwebbed across it. I staggered backward, shaking my head, clutching my ears. "No," I whispered. "You don't get me. You don't get my name." The crowd hissed in unison, their smiles collapsing into gaping, jagged mouths. The boy's hand curled into a claw. The church walls groaned as though the whole building might collapse. The woman staggered to her feet, her voice raw. "If you won't give it your name, then give it mine." Before I could react, she stepped forward, past me, into the boy's outstretched hand. The instant their skin touched, the hum exploded into a shriek. Light burst from her eyes and mouth, searing white, so bright I had to shield my face. Her body arched unnaturally, every tendon straining, before she went still. The boy's smile returned, colder than ever. He turned his gaze on me, and in that terrible, layered voice, he spoke, one less. The congregation bowed their heads in eerie unison. The hum stopped. The woman's body fell to the floor, brittle as glass, shattering into pieces of ice that scattered across the stone. The boy closed his eyes. One by one, the glowing eyes of the crowd flickered out. The figures began to crumble, collapsing into heaps of frost and ash, as if the life had finally left them. Silence fell. I stood in the empty church, shaken, my breath ragged in the frozen air. The boy was gone. The crowd was gone. Only the broken remains of the woman lingered on the floor. For a long time, I didn't move. I couldn't. My mind reeled with what had just happened. But slowly, the realization crept in. I was alone. And alive. I stumbled out of the church just as dawn broke. The town was empty. Silent. Every street buried in snow. No footprints remained. No glowing eyes stared from windows. Just a ghost town, still and cold. The road back stretched before me, endless white into the horizon. My truck was still there, half buried, waiting. I climbed in, turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared to life. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The town was shrinking behind me, swallowed by the snow and fog. But just before it vanished from sight, I saw it. A small figure. A boy. Standing in the middle of the street, watching me go. Smiling. I made it out. I told myself it was over. That I'd left the hunger behind. That the town had finally gone still. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it again. That low hum. In my walls. In my bones. In my name. And I wonder if I ever really escaped at all. I should have known something was wrong the moment the plane landed. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio. Weather's worse than predicted. Visibility near zero. You sure you want to get off here? I did. I had to. North Hollow was just a name on a map, forgotten by everyone except for the occasional survivalist or researcher like me. I had read about abandoned cabins and untouched wilderness. Perfect for solitude. Or so I thought. The snow was thicker than any I had ever seen. It bit into my lungs, burned my skin, and sank into my bones like ice needles. The town, or what was left of it, was buried under several feet of frozen white. I spotted a cabin in the distance. Its roof sagged, walls cracked, and smoke curled lazily from a rusted chimney. Someone, or something, had been here recently. Inside, the smell hit me. Iron and wet earth, maybe old blood. Ash from the fireplace was still warm. I set my pack down and shivered, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Then I heard it. A scraping sound against the wood outside. I told myself it was the wind, but deep down, I knew better. That night, I couldn't sleep. The cabin's wooden walls creaked with the wind, and shadows seemed to move on their own. I kept hearing whispers, soft and distant, like 100 voices talking all at once. Then I saw them, a pair of eyes, yellow, glowing, staring from the tree line, too big for a bear, too still for a human. And when they blinked, the darkness around them seemed to warp. I wanted to run, but the snowstorm had intensified. Leaving meant vanishing into the blizzard. I was trapped. Hours passed. I heard something walking through the snow. Heavy steps. Slow, calculated. My flashlight beam was useless in the whiteout. And yet, I felt watched. Every breath I took was measured. Every heartbeat echoed through the forest like a drum. Around midnight, I finally saw it clearly. Something moved closer to the cabin. Tall, skeletal, with long limbs, that bent in ways that were impossible. Its head was narrow, featureless except for two glowing eyes, and it hums. A low, almost musical hum that made my teeth ache. I couldn't move. My body froze while it circled the cabin. Then it stopped. Its glowing eyes locked onto mine. I swore I felt my thoughts being pulled, twisted. The hum stopped abruptly. Silence swallowed everything. And then, I heard my name, spoken in a voice I recognized. My mother's, faint and distant. "Come here." I ran. Not from the creature, but into the woods, blindly. Snow swallowed my footprints almost immediately. Branches clawed at my face, and the cold burned like fire. I tripped, fell, and scrambled back toward the cabin. But when I arrived, the door was gone. I spent hours searching for it, running through a forest that seemed endless, with trees twisting into shapes I couldn't recognize. The snowstorm never stopped. Somehow, I kept seeing the eyes, always watching, following, yet never approaching. Finally, I stumbled upon another cabin. Smaller, simpler, less inviting. But it was a shelter, at least. Inside, the fireplace had not been used recently. There were remnants of food, dried meat, empty cans, but no human presence. On the wall, scratched into the wood, were words. The snow listens. The snow remembers. The snow takes. I didn't sleep that night. I barely ate. Every sound, every shadow, every whisper in the storm made me flinch. Over the next few days, the creature, or whatever it was, became bolder. I started seeing figures in the snow, human shapes, frozen mid-step, faces twisted in terror. They weren't alive, but they weren't completely dead either. They moved sometimes, barely, as if the snow itself was puppeteering them. I realized with horror that the snow wasn't just a backdrop. It was alive, watching, learning, and slowly claiming me too. One night, the glowing eyes appeared inside the cabin, standing at the doorway. The hum returned, louder, more insistent, pulling at my thoughts, bending reality around me. I couldn't leave. I couldn't stay. The snow whispered my name, promised safety if I obeyed. But I knew obeying meant becoming one of them. Days blurred. My food ran out. My warmth was gone. My sanity frayed. The snowstorm never ended. Every time I tried to leave, the forest reshaped itself. Trees moved, paths vanished, and the cabin would appear elsewhere, like the forest was playing with me. The creature began appearing closer. At the edge of the fireplace, outside the window, in the snowdrift itself. It hummed, pulling my mind toward it, toward the snow. I screamed once. The snow swallowed it. No echo. No sound returned. I realized I'd been walking in circles for days, weeks maybe. Time lost meaning. The snow had erased it. I couldn't run anymore. The creature came into the cabin that night, tall, skeletal, humming, its glowing eyes fixed on me. I felt the snow pulling me toward it, promising warmth, peace, escape from the endless cold. I remembered the scratched words on the wall. The snow takes. I understood then. Not just the creature, but the snow itself. It preserved. It froze. It claimed. Survival meant giving in, or hiding forever. I had no strength left. I closed my eyes and whispered my final words. I belong to the snow. The hum rose to a deafening crescendo. My body froze where I sat, the cold sinking into my bones. My skin hardened, my breath stopped, and yet I could still feel, still think, as the snow encased me completely. The eyes blinked once, then vanished. Silence. I was no longer alive, no longer dead. I was part of the snow, part of North Hollow, waiting for the next traveler. The wind howled. The forest shifted. The snow listened. The snow remembered. And it waited. And so, the nightmare ends. Or maybe it doesn't. If you enjoyed this journey into Alaska's darkness, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave your thoughts in the comments, because more terrifying stories are waiting.